Hello, good afternoon, good morning. How are you doing? I hope you're well. I'm well. I'm not well, I'm actually ill, but that's okay, that's not your problem. If you haven't already watched it, go and watch my September TBR, because I'm about to show you all the books that I chose from there. We chose Prompts Out of a Jar. It was very exciting for me, don't know if it was exciting for you. I had a great day. It is now September 1st, which is insane. I don't know how that happened, but we're going to start the TBR, and I think in today's video I'm just going to do a reading vlog of 2 of the books from my TBR. So quickly I'll show you the TBR. Oh my god, it's heavy. In no particular order, this is the TBR. And I've got a few set aside for different videos. Fourth Wing is having its own video because she needs her own video. But I think we're going to go with, we're going to do Tender as a Flesh because I've technically started it. And I want to know what happens, and I've heard it's wild. And then I think a fun contrast would be People of Abandoned Character. So yeah, we're going to read these 2 books in this video. Tender as the Flesh is a dystopia where there was a disease that wiped out all the animals, so now people have turned to cannibalism to get meat, so they're eating other people. That's all I know about it. I've heard it's absolutely wild, and I've been warned to mentally prepare. So I love a book where you're told to mentally prepare. And then People of Abandoned Character is, as far as I know, a sort of historical literary fiction about Jack the Ripper, or about the woman married to Jack the Ripper, I think. Reading vlog, we're going to read both of these, and come along, hear my thoughts, get a cup of tea, get comfortable. Let's get reading. Okay, so I've got to page 79 of People of Abandoned Character, so I've read 7 chapters. So far we're following a woman called Susanna Chapman, I think that's her maiden name, and she basically, her grandmother dies on the first page, not a spoiler, and because her grandmother's died, she's sort of now free of any responsibility she had because she was looking after her, and now she's moved to London, to the London hospital, to become a nurse. It's kind of jumping back and forth a little bit over timelines, so that's sort of happened in the past, and now in the present she's married a man called Thomas who she met at the hospital, and she's left behind the nursing. We've met Mrs. Wiggs, which is their housekeeper. She looks after this really nice house in Chelsea where they're now living, but Mrs. Wiggs seems very odd and doesn't seem to like her, and she's trying to get Mrs. Wiggs to like her, but there's something very off about their relationship, like from the start. And basically the start of Thomas and her relationship, their marriage, is really, really good, and then it sort of starts getting very volatile and aggressive, and she's kind of hinting at things that have been said but not necessarily really explaining them fully right now. But it's very interesting, it's very engaging. I feel like a lot has happened for only 80 pages in. But yeah, I really like the writing style. It reminds me a little bit of Hamnet, but I'm not sure why. I don't know if that's just because they're both historical fictions and have blue covers. Probably is that, to be honest. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. So I thought I'd give a little update. I can't remember when I last spoke to you about this one, but I'm on page 179. So now we're getting to the point where we're getting more details of the murders. So the main character is basically collecting newspaper articles and kind of piecing together bits about all the murders happening in Whitechapel, which is currently the police are looking for someone called Leather Apron. So I'm guessing the whole Jack the Ripper thing comes in later. I don't know too much about that. I'm guessing that's just like a different theory that the police currently have. And then outside of that, you're also getting more about Susanna's time when she was working at the hospital. So you've got her talking about Aisling, which is I think like her best friend at the hospital, and basically it sounds like something has happened to Aisling. We're not sure whether she's died or whether she's just gone away, but there's lots of talk of like Aisling not being there anymore, and like moments of I love seeing moments of their relationship because Aisling is so cool, and like their relationship is so fun because they're such different people. Aisling's very like out there and outspoken, and Susanna's the opposite, and she's not very good with people in general. So seeing those like worlds crossing over is really, really interesting. But yeah, I'm still very intrigued. About just under halfway. I'd say probably about 40% through the book at the moment. I still don't know if he's Jack the Ripper or not, but I presume all will be revealed. I finished People of Abandoned Character by Claire Whitfield. The final third of this, I'm gonna say, is wild. Like, it's not like a different story, but it's different. it really made me, it really recenters the kind of like what the story's about. There's hints of it throughout, but you kind of get to the end and you're like, oh, that's what the story's about. I thought it was about this other thing. You really get to see more of those two worlds combining, sort of the past and the present, who Susanna was before she met Thomas, who she is because of him. Those sort of accumulate to this different being, if you will. You definitely get a lot of like the characters' motivations towards the end, and they're definitely, at least for me, not what I was expecting. And you get more of the Susanna-Aisling relationship, which I just adored. I honestly could have had more of that because I was just like, ugh. It was so well written. It's not what you thought it was going to be about. It's just she's sort of put in extra little details where it just gives everything more depth. But I would definitely recommend this if you like a historical fiction, or really a literary fiction, because while this is written in the past, obviously it's written in 1888, I don't think it's written in like inaccessible language or anything. The language fits the tone, but it's still completely accessible. I think in a similar way that Hamlet did it, which is maybe why I made that comparison earlier. I feel like they're both very accessible texts, even though they're set in a past where sometimes when you read books from that time, they're really, really difficult to read. This isn't that. But if you like a historical fiction, I still think it's really interesting. But if you just like a literary fiction, I still think this reads just like a literary fiction. And it's more like a literary fiction that happens to be set in the past, in my opinion. But I don't know. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. And I'm excited to see what Claire Whitfield does next, because this is her debut novel, which this is insane for a debut novel. This is so well written. So I'll definitely read whatever she writes next. I'm excited. Okay, now we're going to read Tender as the Flesh. We're going to move on to that, which I'm very excited for. Okay, so I just got back from the theatre. I was reading on the train. I went to see The Effect at the National if anyone's interested. Highly recommend. It's actually insane. You should definitely go catch it if you can. But on the train I was reading Tender is the Flesh, and I got to page 58. So I thought I'd give my initial thoughts. This is a difficult read already. It's very graphic, it's very disturbing. I know it's meant to be, but it is a lot. It's very interesting. There's a lot of like technical language and world building, so it does take a lot of concentration. So basically, so far it's introduced us to the main character Marcos, and he runs a processing plant that is now processing humans instead of animals, because all the animals have been killed and people are now eating humans. So he's like in charge of that, but he doesn't really like it, but he goes along with it because I think there's like a threat that if he doesn't go along with it, he will then get taken off to be killed for meat, because it's quite a like totalitarian world, I guess. Like I read there was a curfew, and like it seems like if you do anything out of line, the punishment is just you'll be sent off to be killed. So we've been introduced to him and like a little bit about his life. His wife is living away. There seems like there's quite a lot going on in his family. His father's in a care home, and he's basically I guess the first like big thing that's happened is that he's been given I don't know what they're calling her. I think they've been calling her a specimen, or like they refer to her as a female, and basically they've given him a woman who is like one of the specially grown people that they're going to kill, but he's been gifted her as like because she's like special, and she's like high-end quality meat. It's really like odd and weird and horrible, but so yeah, he's been gifted her, and he's basically like, I don't want her, I don't know what to do with her. Like, to him it's more of an inconvenience than anything. But I think he's starting to feel a bit bad for her. Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued with it so far. It's definitely taking a lot of concentration to like follow like everything that's going on, because it's a lot of like technical stuff, but it's very interesting. I've never read a book like it. But yeah, I'm very intrigued to see where it's gonna go. I got to page 135. If I thought part 1 was weird, part 2 is a whole other level. Oh my god. I don't know. Oh my god. The morals in this book anyway were insane and awful, but they've just got 1,000 times worse. And I know it's the point, I know it's the story, but reading it is so deeply uncomfortable. And again, it's meant to be. I don't know how to feel. The book's split into 2 parts, so part 1 I've just finished, and part 2 is a few months later. Part 1 was a lot of like setting up the world and the politics of everything. I feel like part 2 is going to be a lot more like stuff happening, because basically I'm like 3 pages into part 2 and already something massive has happened. I was warned before reading this. One of my friends read it and she was like, be warned, it's uncomfortable to read. And I see what she's talking about. But the writing's great. I'm gonna keep reading because I have no idea what's gonna happen now. I'm back again, just very quickly, because I'm on page 152 and one of the characters just said something, and I feel like it is the audience, not the audience, the author directly saying it to the audience, the reader. It might not be, but so the character goes, does this pose a moral dilemma for you? Do you find it atrocious? Like, that's the quote. And I feel like that is the author being like, do you find this atrocious? Does this propose a moral dilemma for you? That was it. I read that line and I was like, that feels like the author just speaking directly to the reader. Maybe I'm reading into that, but does this propose a moral dilemma for you? Do you find it atrocious? I'm just saying. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. This is getting absolutely insane. I've never read anything like this. So, I finished the book. My brain, oh my god. I finished like 20 minutes ago and I've just sort of been sat staring at the wall, trying to process my thoughts. Apparently I haven't processed them yet. This is so... It's not a comfortable read. I felt icky reading it the whole way through. The second half especially. I mean, the first half is messed up, but the second half is... Oh... I wish there was an author's note, because I kind of got to the end and I was like, I want to know what the author, like, was thinking. It's very well written. It's interesting. It is unlike anything I've ever read before. It's a really good book. It's just very difficult to read, if that makes sense. I was so engaged the whole time, and I've flown through it. I've read it so quickly. I've never had such like a visceral reaction to a book before, which is a good thing. If an author's making you feel anything that strongly, it's a good sign. They did such a brilliant job of creating the world and all of the characters and making you feel for these characters, even though what they're doing is so like inherently wrong. It's odd because the main character Marcos is like, some of what he does you're kind of like, oh okay cool, I can get on board with that, and then he does something else and you're like, what? And there's a lot of hypocrisy, I guess, in what he does and how he acts, which again I think is all intentional. I think everything in this book is intentional, but it's just so like, it's hard to root for the characters, but again, intentional. I mean, read it, see what you think. I want to know what other people think. Because I've only had one other friend read it and she loved it, but she kind of said the same as me. She was like, I loved it, but it's disturbing. And I was like, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, anyway, I'm gonna wrap the video up here. I feel like I should have read these books in the other order. Although to be fair, the other one was also quite a difficult read as well, so. I need a really light book now just to get me in a different headspace. But I enjoyed the books nonetheless, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe. Thank you for being here, and have a lovely rest of your day.